Stampscaping 101, we're going to try and finish this half-page scene in pretty quick manner here. Okay, so I did this scene 2 days ago in this very spring-like, kind of fresh and airy type of color scheme, using the 3mm paint pens as kind of the focus as far as the textural kind of theme of the piece, okay, and colors of the piece as well. And this one is, I have a moon right here, okay. You could turn it into a sun, though. It just depends on how you color it. If I colored this in yellows and, sunset colors or something like this could easily be a sunset scene. But in the spirit of the, what I was thinking about at the time when I created it, I was thinking about a moonlit scene. I was thinking about moon rays coming from that too, but let's kind of decide on that as we get into this, okay? All right, now I'm going to start coloring this scene in a range of blue tones. So one of the things that I'm going to have people do in my workshops coming up is if they have a re-inker in their lightest blue, this one's Summer Sky, of the Memento range of inks, I would have used the tumbled glass, but I'm out of it. I'm out of that, and I think getting really low on, looks like I'm out of antique linen too. But just going with some sort of light tone as your first one, okay? All right, now where do we color something like this? Well, if my moon is going to be my illuminating source of light in this scene, then I'm going to want to keep that fairly light right there, okay? But as far as these meadows go down here and the road, I want to keep certain areas of those a little bit lighter to be reflective of that source of light shining on them somewhere. So you have to kind of decide what you want to remain light. Okay, well, let's start with something really simple right now, okay? So let's go into the sky right here. And this, if I didn't mention it, is a piece of the Mohawk Everyday Digital White Coated Silk. I have something sticky on this. Oh, it's my glue. Okay, let's close that up a little bit. There, okay. All right, so I'm just going in here, and the paper is absorbing, the cardstock's absorbing my ink fairly quickly, okay? Now, when I'm going over here by my moon, I'm using less pressure, okay? I'm using kind of a softer touch, okay? And plus, I've already applied some of the ink, so it's getting drier on my paper towel applicator here, okay? But now, let's take a look. This is the part where, it gets confusing for people as far as a lighting scheme. We're not used to kind of doing partially lit areas most of the time, okay? But I'm going to show you how easy it is to do this, okay? All right, so I'm just going in here, and I'm going to kind of oscillate my lights and darks. So I put a little bit of tone over here. I see these trees right in here, and I'm going to have them casting, as a shadow like that, okay? So I've inked up in here and inked up over here. If this moon right here, just in theory, you might want to have your chapel, casting a shadow down there below that. Here's some other trees right here. So let's put a little bit of a moonlight underneath those, okay? All right, now, from here, where do you tone in? Well, do you see this curvilinear road here, how it's defined by the shadow down here? Okay, it's darker right on that edge. So I'm going to go in, and I'm just very lightly applying this, okay? I'm barely touching it. It's like dry brushing it, okay? I'm going to put some on that road because I don't want it stark white. I don't want it to look like it's been illuminated by kind of a light, underneath there or something like that. So, and then there's this far end of the road. I'll put a shadow on right there, okay? All right, now, just in general, what I like to do after that, see it's underneath some of these trees. We're casting a little bit of a shadow here and there. You can dab too. If you've just freshly stamped this off, you might be smearing some of your images, so you can kind of dab like this instead. Okay, but now I like to make my entire perimeter a little bit darker, okay? So let's go in and add some perimeter tone around like this, okay? See, this is right here. Here's my little hill or whatever, slope, I guess you can say. Okay, so do you see kind of the lighting scheme starting to present itself a little bit? My paper towel right here is getting really dry at this point in time, but I'm going to keep utilizing it until just nothing comes off of it, okay? But you can see, I mean, we've done a lot of toning here with just this one inking of this paper towel right here. A few drops of your re-inker can go a really long way, okay? So remember the perimeter right around here, so especially the four corners like this, okay? And you see how that kind of frames things off? And look at that lighting scheme that's kind of been revealed in here, okay? So added it underneath some of those trees, okay? And then gone for a perimeter. And to make that moon stand out, I've toned in most of the sky. I've left some of those clouds a little bit lighter here and there, so if you missed some of it, that's all the best. I mean, I can go and tone it in if I want to, but I want some of those clouds to be reflecting some of that moonlight, okay? You see that looks like the moonlight is kind of hitting this area? If this area was lighter over here and this area was darker, then the moonlight would be hitting that area, okay? So just as it doesn't really matter, I mean, it matters maybe a little bit, but not as much as you would think, okay? You can fake things, okay? And you can just define where you want your eye to go, you know, the viewer's eye to go when you're doing this, okay? I guess we're directing our own eye as well by focusing the attention in the illuminated areas, okay? And I'm not toning out that entire chapel there either, because I want some of that moonlight to be hitting it. I don't want it to be obscured in the darkness to, you know, if you're going to stamp something like a little figure somewhere, you know, you can do it right now and just kind of spotlight it by bringing in some tone around it, you know, so that it looks like it's in the spotlight, whatever you want. See these things more like a stage, okay, than something like, wait a minute, where would the light be if the moon was out there? See it as this is your stage, okay? And you're a lighting director on your own stage, and you're saying, well, hey, you know, Kevin, I've never been a lighting director. Well, you kind of you're just bringing the attention wherever you want the viewer to go, okay? If this isn't an important area over here, which is not for me, I'm just going to kind of tone it out a little bit, okay? All right, now this is the second color of blue that I'm using right here. This is just a Marvy blue. If I don't have to go too dark, you know, if you have kind of those intermediate colors between something in between the first color and this color, go ahead and use it. If you don't, then just jump onto your next color, okay? The more colors that you add down in this type of process, though, in dye-based inks, because they're transparent, the richer the end result can potentially be in terms of the amount of color depth that you achieve, okay? So when I'm doing this right here, I'm losing a lot of that first color, the summer sky, because I'm overlapping it a lot, but that summer sky isn't lost, okay? I might have covered it up largely, but all these other subsequent colors are going to be, they're all transparent because these are dye-based inks, okay? So, even though they're covered up, they're still reading, they're still influencing your overall color scheme, your lighting scheme, the richness of the overall appearance with the use of layered color depth, I guess you can call it. Okay. All right, so going in here, adding it down like that. It doesn't take a long time to do this either, okay? Because the first color kind of saturated the page pretty good. All right, so we're adding these other colors in over the top of it. These colors that you add in over the top of kind of an already kind of damp color or ink that's saturated the page pretty good, it's allowing the colors that we add over the top of it to be a little bit more surface oriented. They're not soaking in as fast, okay? So it makes my blending process and coloring process go so much faster, okay? So spend a good deal of time with your first color, you know, get a lot of ink down, kind of saturate your cardstock a little bit, and it makes it easier to blend in these darker colors now because I'm not applying the darker color on a dry surface that's absorbing the ink so fast. So this is a very dry surface. If I go like that, that is hard set right there, okay? But if I do that right here on this cardstock, first of all, it's already darker underneath, but that really blends out really simply for me. You see what I mean? So you set yourself up for color applications. If you're doing this type of color application, not everyone does this. You might be doing colored pencils or pastels or chalks or whatever, you know what I mean? But as far as this type of color application, it really makes it go really easy, simple, really kind of hard to, you know, kind of get undesirable, unexpected marks if you work in this type of process right here. So it doesn't take years and years of, you know, technique. That's what people say, oh my God, you know, that must take years of practice. Well, it doesn't take years of practice if you use enough of that ink to lay down. People can get the exact same results that I do. In fact, they always did in the workshops that I did. But I always make sure they use a lot of ink on that first one because I know that's what it takes to get this type of, you know, easy application process. The problem is, you know, when people are first doing this type of process right here, they're thinking of coloring, okay? They're not really thinking of layering things as much or blending, okay? So when you're doing this coloring, you got to think about terms of like saturation and it's kind of like glazing colors down, okay? I don't just go for one coating of a certain color. I go, you know, for a pretty good saturation of it. It's more so with the first couple colors, though, that you're doing. You know, as you get darker like this, you don't have to lay down quite as much, okay? All right, now this is the Danube blue. It's a pretty dark blue, but, I mean, you can't really see too much of a difference there, can you, from there to right here? It's because when you're doing this like this, you're getting a little bit of a combination of all the colors that you've used so far, because I'm using the same area of the paper towel, for one. And also because the paper is getting pretty saturated, so you get this kind of super saturation happening, where the ink isn't as applying as fast as that first, you know, one or two colors, because the paper was still absorbing a lot of that ink, okay? Doing this right here, the paper's fairly absorbent, so I'm applying wet into wet there, okay? So you don't get a lot of the, or as fast of an ink transfer. Which makes it good, though. It's good that's not transferring so fast, because it's so much easier to blend in that way when you're not, you know, leaving a super distinct mark with any even horrible application. Like, I'm really squeezing this in. I'm just trying to make a point that I'm not going to get that doesn't blend, okay? See, if I do that over this area right here, you know, it just kind of blends in with the background, and plus it's super saturated, so that ink that you apply on top of something that's wet, you can kind of blend out like that. I didn't need to, because it's, you know, it's just not transferring on there so, you know, so fast. All right, so I'm going to mix into this tone that's been applied here a little bit of a twist. Okay, this is everything right here is a cool blue, right? This is a little bit of Caribbean blue. Okay, has a little bit of yellow in it. So I am going to apply some of that, and we'll warm up the scene slightly, okay? So let's try this one out. It looks like I've really re-inked that recently. Let's give it a try. Always kind of use it in, you know, your corners and darker areas first, and then you can kind of move it in. I'll show you what this looks like on one side, and we can do a little compare contrast, okay? Do you see that difference between that area over there and this area down here? A little bit of different spirits, a little bit of a warmer tinge to it, right? So I am going to incorporate that into the rest of this. Okay. I just want to go for a little bit of a temperature change with a little bit of a warmer blue here and there. Okay. I mean, this isn't like an instructional thing. You should use a warm blue or something like that. I've just always gone with, some pretty cool, the standard blues in the past. But it's kind of more, I don't know, warm tinge is fun for me because, I don't know, like I said, I didn't really use this Caribbean blue for many years. It wasn't one of the first ones released in the Marvy line, and that's largely what I was using over the years. I like the Distress Inks and the Mementos a lot. The Mementos are really good in terms of fade. They're fade resistant. Now, I've used other colors in here, and they're not fade resistant, so I'm not going to be hanging this up, kind of in full sunlight or something like that. But that's one of the really kind of nice aspects of it. I haven't put it to the test and hung something up and done, tested a light fastness type of, rating. But I don't know. They say that. I don't know how it is that they're fade resistant, but I don't know. That's what they say. Okay, or that's what they claim. All right, let's see here. Let's go for a little bit more warmth, okay? I'm going to use... I was telling someone, I did this whole scene right here with this one paper towel right here. And it is good to, reduce, reuse, recycle, and whatnot. But, you can get quite a bit done with the same. And this is like a quarter piece of paper towel too, so, two pretty big scenes right here using this one. Okay, so this is the antique linen, and my antique linen pad is probably a little bit dry, so I'm not going to be expecting too much from it, but let's see if we can get a little bit of a temperature change using this. Yeah, looks pretty good there. Let's add a little bit of around that moon too. A little tinge of it. It's not my colors right here are not blended perfectly, okay? They're okay, but I always tell people I plan on doing other things to this scene anyway. Okay, I'm going to bring in different white applications in terms of paint pens and pigment ink. So I don't need things to be blended in perfectly at this point in time. It would be nice to watch, just some beautiful scene developing, and it's completely beautiful all along the way, but you know what I mean? I don't get that when I'm doing these scenes like this, okay? They go through their periods where it's looking like, yeah, I mean, I'm never questioning it because I know it's just part of the process. I'm on like step, I don't know, whatever, N, and I'm going to step Q or something like that. I don't know, whatever it might be, okay? So I just know that I'm just, working the process as opposed to I haven't arrived yet, if I've only done a few steps, so I don't worry about that type of thing. I just kind of let things develop. I'm kind of curious how they'll develop or how something will kind of bring something together if I just stick with it and let it develop and, I just kind of see where it goes. So I don't see kind of certain times as kind of a rough period or anything like that. It's just kind of a preliminary period. Now, sometimes if I'm trying something new, I don't know if it's going to come out, all right? But I have confidence it will most of the time. Sometimes it's a real kind of experiment, where I'm thinking, oh boy, I'm just not quite sure of the the process, and that's in a lot of these videos, where I'm kind of testing things. And a lot of it is for the first time, so I do kind of question it sometimes. I'm just not quite sure if something will be able to be applied on top of a medium that I haven't worked with before. Will pigment ink work over, I don't know, paint pens or pastels or something like that? I just don't know sometimes. Okay, so that is that. I've worked through black, okay? Let's add in some other elements into here coming up, but that is the coloring process right there. And let's see now. This is the point where I'm kind of wondering, what should we do on here? Okay, now I was thinking about some moonbeams coming out of there. Now, I think it's just fine without them, okay? But when I was doing this scene, that's what I was thinking about trying out. I've done sunbeams a lot, okay? But I don't think I've done a lot of moonbeams before. All right, so let's see. Let's try some of those. And, okay. I'm trying to, what's going through in my head is I'm wondering if I should apply anything else in here before I do the moonbeams, okay? Sometimes it's better to work, in a certain order. If there's going to be something that you're going to lay down and you want it to be in front of everything, then you better do it last, okay? But sometimes, like with these moonbeams here, sometimes I like to have it going in front of some things and in back of others. So I might lay down, like, for example, a foreground image in here, and I might lay it down right now, like an overhanging tree limb. And let's say the moonbeams are going in front of those limbs, but in back of other ones, okay? So you're kind of sandwiching the moonbeam or the light beam in between something. So those are the different types of things you can kind of think about. It doesn't have to get too complicated or anything like that. I would just suggest doing the moonbeams, then near your foreground, when you're first learning to do things. But, if you want to make things kind of a little bit more interesting for you as you do these types of techniques over time, then you might want to, try something else. And that's where I am, too. I like to see new things periodically, coming from your desk, or my desk. So I might kind of play around and tinker around with things once in a while. Okay, so I'm adding a little bit of pigment ink, or a lot, kind of more towards my moon, okay? Because the moon is going to be my illuminating light source. But as I go away from the moon, it just depends on what beam, okay? I kind of taper it off, so it's just going like that. See, it kind of weakens and it just goes up there like that. I mean, I can make it stronger if I want to. But those are the different types of things you can do, too. You don't have to make things absolutely uniform. You can alter things and vary them. And that makes it really fun. Plus, it takes the kind of necessity to be kind of exact, I guess. Exacting off of us, okay? And I think it makes it look a little bit more realistic that way, too. Okay, now this one's going up in the sky, but watch this one right here. I'm going to have this moonbeam, this next one, go behind this tree, but in front of these trees, okay? So let's try that. Sometimes it makes it look a little bit more three-dimensional. By the way, my vanishing point is right in the center of that moon, okay? And then we can make the moonbeams as white as we want it to be, okay? All right, so let's see. In back of this tree, so I'm not going to mask off the tree or something like that. It's not like that, and then I'll have it go in front of these other trees, like back here. I'm going to kind of make this beam a little bit more of a curtain by adding more of it up top and less of it down below. So it's going stronger from strong, more white over here, to less white over here, but also I'm putting more of it on the top, okay? That's what I started doing. My beams were all kind of uniform when I first started doing this, but then I thought, let's vary it a little bit, okay? And then, so I do something like that. Okay, so you can see that it's in back of this tree, but in front of these trees, right here. So it's kind of like slipping right through there. It makes things, these beams seem a little bit more, or a lot more kind of dimensional that way. Okay, let's put this one in front of this right here. Maybe I'll make this one a little bit more narrow, okay? I'm just kind of gauging it. I'm just varying it. If one was like really kind of thick, you know, and wide, then the next one might be narrow and thin, okay? Or something, you know what I mean? I just try to vary things just for visual interest, so... you can make things more uniform, though, if you want to, okay? It has its own kind of particular look to it, okay? All right, now see, one of the things that I need to mention with these, when you're doing these types of beams like this, is white pigment ink, when applied over your imagery like this, tends to look a little bit lighter when it's been freshly applied, okay? And it dries a little bit more transparent, so you have, it looks darker, in other words, when it dries, so you'll need to apply a little bit more than you think you'll need. Or, if it gets too dark when it dries, you just put another layer on top, and it, you know, the more layers you put down on top of it, it tends to look a little bit more opaque and light, okay? I'll put it behind the tree for this beam, and maybe in front of the fence here, okay? That. You can have some beams going behind the hill, too, and just kind of disappearing. Biggest thing is just variation. Just do it, you know, change things up a little bit. It makes it more interesting for you. As a creator, too, over time. You always want to do the things that are going to make things interesting for you. You know, to avoid, you know, repetition. No, repetition on some things. I mean, if you really like the look, then certainly do it. But if you get tired of it, then vary things and, you know, kind of change things up a little bit with each piece, or try to bring something new to it. So for me, these light beams, it was all kind of uniform with the same thicknesses. Then I started doing wider beams. Sometimes I'll do a beam within a beam, something like that. And it's always kind of fun to do, to play around. So you're kind of just always, I don't know, kind of just playfully challenging yourself to, you know, to add something, to reinterpret, whatever. Okay. All right. Now those beams look a little bit harsh to me, so what I'm going to do is, after I get those laid down like that, what I do is I go back into this whole piece, and then I'll just kind of blend them together a little bit. So, you know, the source of light, I'm just adding a little bit more light with this, like so. And then I can add in some additional kind of fog and illumination, which would be out there in this type of scenario here. If we can see the light beams like that, it means that there's kind of moisture in the air and some fog, and that's defining those light beams. Okay, so I'm kind of adding that around some of these beams like this. I can add a little bit of a kind of a haze around my chapel like this, or kind of a fog on the the floor of the meadow here. So it gives it a whole kind of a nice atmosphere. Alright, one of the things I didn't do yet is I didn't do the paint pens. I wanted to use some of those paint pens in here too. It'd be a good idea to use them before this, but I'll just sandwich them in here. I'll apply some of them in here now, and then go over it again with some additional white. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, the thing for me, I think this scene's looking pretty good, but the thing that's missing for me are details. Okay, so I like adding crisp little kind of features here and there. Now, on this one right here, I went for this specifically kind of I don't know, impressionistic type of application of dots. In painting, they called it, or one of the terms is pointillism. Okay, it's not so much stippling. Stippling is like when you're doing that with kind of technical pens. That's the way I design my stamps, with these, little tiny little dots. But in the painting movement, it was called pointillism. Okay, so I don't know. It's little dots to kind of represent. The Impressionists did it too. It was kind of to represent colored light. Okay, so these are the colors that are kind of within this color scheme right here. So it's good that we have, a pretty good choice of paint pens these days to choose from. There's so many different colors for us to use, different sizes. These ones are the extra fine. These ones are the 3mm, which are anything but extra fine. And as I always state in my videos, because it still kind of surprises me that I'm using these things. I never would have thought I would use such a big medium or applicator such as these. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start adding these kind of in a rough area where it's about the same value as the color that I'm using. And then I'll kind of run it out into a little bit of a darker area. Okay, just so it looks like little shimmering little bits of light kind of within that space. And it's going to look really strange, okay, because it's the only texture that looks like that, okay, on the entire card. So you have to kind of apply that. But you can see from a distance here, see how that's kind of shimmering there, okay? It's like looking at it at arm's distance. So right here, it's pretty crazy, right? But when you hold it at arm's distance, it just kind of blends in like that, okay? So I'm adding it again in this area. I'm not bringing it too much into the area that's lighter than it, okay? Like in this white area here. I mean, I could, but it would look like little dark little dots, and I want this to look like kind of more like shimmering light. So it's more of a kind of a darker area application, but I don't want it too dark because I don't want these things to stand out so much, okay? If it's in a super dark area, there won't be any light in there anyway, okay? So it's kind of in that little zone. So you have to just kind of decide where that is on your piece. Because everyone's pieces are going to be different. It just depends on how dark you took certain areas and where yours is in particular. I can add this into some of my trees like this, the deciduous trees. Back in the far slope here. You can add it into your clouds if you want to as well. Okay. I have a little bit of this beige too. We brought in some of that antique linen, which is, kind of similar to this color right here. So like I said, I mean, like this paint pen set here, there's not a lot of colors, but, it has a pretty decent range represented. Okay, so right in here, we can bring a little bit of this warmth in here. Stands out pretty, quite a bit, so I'm going to use it a little bit more fairly sparingly. Okay. So kind of warm light there hitting the meadow, like that. Okay. And let's go ahead and go with the blue. Or this is more of like a warm, it's like that Caribbean blue. So I'm kind of hitting it with the same colors, like I said, that I've colored my scene with, okay? You have to really shake up your pens before each use to make them as opaque as they can get. Okay, now let's go to white. And I'll apply this where there's still kind of the white of the paper is still showing, okay, where I didn't color it in too much. That's why we've retained a lot of those areas in there of light. Yeah, I mean, if there was a little bit of a tinge of some other color, it's fine to use this over that. But if you colored, a lot, this white would really show up in those areas, so it might be a little bit too extreme in that case, but as long as it's fairly light, this white, can kind of harmonize with the setting. I mean, it doesn't have to, it could represent like flowers or something like that too, like pearly everlasting or something like that in the moonlight. Okay, and I'm going to get these tree trunks, a couple of the tree trunks. I like doing my tree trunks a little bit lighter, just, I don't know, they look good, kind of illuminated on one side, and I have that in the design itself too. The designs are, have some of the trunk illuminated, so if you look at a scene like this, see right here where I've illuminated my tree trunks, okay, I've gone up into these branches and a couple of areas, those little white marks like that are with this extra fine paint pen. Look at my finger. Okay, so what I do is I turn it upside down so I can go for this real graceful, kind of check mark like that. Okay. Maybe this one should be a little bit more of the lighter blue, you can illuminate with a light blue instead of a white in areas that are just, really dark. Okay, let's see. I'm just going to use white. It's just easy to do. So see that right there? This trunk's kind of standing out a little bit more. I didn't do it over here yet, but let's bring some of this up into my trees like this. Now I'm just kind of faking. I'm just kind of making my own branches here and there. And I don't know, it gives the trees a little bit more kind of definition and character. It's one of those little details. Okay, I'll put some little moonlight on a couple of the branches kind of facing the moon. So trees to the right of the scene are being left side illuminated, and trees to the left of the scene are being right side illuminated, okay? So it just kind of reiterates that idea of cast light, okay? Kind of makes the trees a little bit more three-dimensional as well, if you have kind of the influence of lighting on them, or kind of directional lighting. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I need to go back in over some of these little dots in here, but let's do it just, to see. I think they blended in pretty well. I didn't think they'd blend in as, they tend to stand out quite a bit, but they blended in quite a bit, so maybe I don't need to knock them down a little bit more like this with this. Well, let's see. How about a little bit more kind of illumination around that moon, making it kind of a real soft, glowing light. Okay. And let's see. Let's use some additional foreground in here. Looking for some additional leaves here. Okay. Let's try this. Let's use some of these. Let's go for a couple impressions in here, okay? I'm going to have some of these. Well, let's go for this one first. I'm going to use the same leaves that I did in this one, kind of hanging down like that. And I'm going to do it in the VersaFine Clair, something really deep, dark, and detailed, and, juicy. Okay. And we'll bring it over here like so. Stamping it right over my, some areas of my moon. Makes it look really dramatic, doesn't it? Where I stamped in a lot of that white pigment ink, it didn't stamp it as dark like that, but it makes it look like those leaves are getting hit by that, that soft glowing mist, though, which is kind of nice. Okay. Have those just like so, and I have this larger cluster of leaves that we'll use as well, just to get a little variation in depth in the foreground as well, so you can use some larger kind of foreground elements and smaller ones. These leaves are just a little bit bigger. Like that. Yeah, look at that. I think this is the first time I've used this leaf cluster in conjunction with that stamp right there, the first leaf stamp called Leaves, but look at that. When you add kind of larger things into a composition, you're putting something that's closer to, that represents something closer to the viewer. And it kind of puts you right into the scene when you have these things like that are within arm's reach. Okay, that clear looks great though too, doesn't it? It's just, that pad is just so dark and, like I said, detailed. Now, I wouldn't be able to do that if I was doing that on glossy cardstock unless I embossed it, which is another option too. I'm thinking about using some kind of embossing on here. I don't think I'm going to do it on this one, but that would be another option there to create some additional depth by having something actually three-dimensional on that. If the scene in back of it got really, really dark, I think I would consider it because the embossing would be kind of shiny and raised. Okay, I'm looking for my Reed's stamp. Where is that? Okay. Let me pause my video. I usually have that. It's usually right in front of my face when I'm looking for something that I can't find. Oh, huh. It's hiding somewhere. Let me go. All right. I have my unmounted version right here. And a mounted version somewhere. I don't know where it went. Okay. Oops. Gotta watch out for that clay. It's really damp there. You can put your finger in it, but just don't drag the finger somewhere else in there. Okay, so let's frame this off a little bit more. Right around here. Okay. Alright, so you see that? Corner's right down here. Okay. I don't think I want to put that horse in here again. I already have that beam going across right there. I'll just leave it as is. I was thinking about it, to create kind of a stronger connection between its sibling design here, sibling scene or whatever. But, alright, so let's take a look here and see what we have. See if there's anything else that we should do on this one. I mean, I could bring in, a little bit more detailing here. Well, why don't we do that? I've been getting a bad habit of saying, hey, we could do this or this or this, but then I don't really do it. But so something like this chapel in here, you can, yeah, that's a little bit too dark of a gray. Let's go with, let's see, here's a much lighter gray. I can go in and add a little bit more shadow work into the chapel. I already have shadows on the chapel as well, okay? So I'm not just kind of inventing it. I'm going in to the design where it's darker to begin with, okay? And adding that in. Right around the door or something. let's take our detailed extra fine point pen. I gotta watch for those Claire impressions. I'm gonna let it dry overnight. But like on these columns right here, they can be capturing some of that light. So I went in, I added some extra shading, okay? But now I'm going in, I can add in a little bit of detailed highlighting here too, like this, okay? So I'm putting, a couple little added highlights on that chapel on the columns or something like that. You can put it wherever you want on the steeple. Okay, now let's add a little bit more highlighting on some of this road here. It just adds a little bit of a sparkle, and it gets kind of the viewer kind of moving in towards the scene. And like on these posts on the fence here, you can kind of have those kind of capturing some of the light as well. This, okay. And on the fence itself, on the design, if you look at the design too, if you get the design, you can see where I have on these rungs, there's some illumination on them already. So, I'm not just inventing that. I'm just kind of reiterating it with the white pen where it's lighter on the design a little bit. I might put a dot or two, where there isn't kind of illumination in the design, but for the most part, you're just kind of reiterating what's already on the design, so you don't have to kind of wonder, wait a minute, where's the highlighting, or where should I highlight something, okay? Now watch this. See, on some of these leaves in here, I mean, if you want to, you can put a couple little dots here. A lot of this ink is still really wet, so kind of just do a little scribble out of it, okay, after you've applied some of it. But I'm putting some of this little highlighting on these leaves instead of being this just kind of this dark, ominous shape. I don't know if they're ominous, but you put a little highlight on it, and it kind of brings that little lighting and sparkle up into these areas like that. See that? It makes them a little bit more kind of dimensional, and it kind of brings them out from the background. All right, so that is it there. Let's get the glare off there. So you see our kind of moonlit chapel there, moonbeams in this case. Okay, so that is that. Hope you enjoyed the scene. That is another kind of finish of one of the stamp sketches from one of my live videos recently. And I was looking forward to this one. Like I said, I don't know if I've done moonbeams too many times before. I've probably done it somewhere along the line, but I didn't really remember doing that or not. So that is what we accomplished here. So one less thing to kind of wonder about. All right. Thanks for watching.